My name is Dinah, and at 22 years old, I thought I finally made my parents proud. I had just graduated summa cum laude from UC Berkeley, and they threw me this huge party in our backyard. The decorations were perfect, the guests were laughing, and I was wearing my favorite cream dress. But as I stood there watching them smile at everyone, something felt wrong. The way they looked at me when they thought I wasn't watching. The coldness behind their eyes. I never imagined that the people who raised me would try to kill me on the happiest day of my life. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe because this story gets darker than you can imagine. Now let me take you back to the moment everything shattered. I need to start from the beginning so you understand how I got here. I was adopted when I was 3 years old. My adoptive parents, Richard and Linda, were wealthy people living in the California suburbs. Richard was 48, worked in real estate, and always wore expensive suits. Linda was 45, spent her days at the country club, and had a smile that never quite reached her eyes. I was their only child, and from the moment I could understand anything, I knew I had to earn my place in their home. I don't remember much about my life before them, just flashes of warmth of someone singing to me of feeling safe. But those memories faded over the years, replaced by the constant pressure to be perfect. I threw myself into school determined to make them love me. I stayed up until 2 a.m. studying for exams. I joined every club they suggested. Debate team, student government, volunteer work at the local hospital. I never complained. I never asked for anything. I just worked and worked and worked, hoping that one day they would look at me with genuine pride. In high school, I brought home straight A grades every semester. I would walk through the front door holding my report card, my heart pounding with hope. Richard would glance at it, nod once, and say, "Good job," before returning to his newspaper. Linda would pat my shoulder absently and remind me to set the table for dinner. No celebration, no hug, no, "We're so proud of you." I told myself they were just not expressive people. That their love was quiet, shown through providing for me. I believed that lie for 19 years. When I got accepted to UC Berkeley with a full scholarship, I thought things would change. I ran into the living room waving the acceptance letter, tears streaming down my face. Richard looked up from his laptop and said, "That's good. You won't be a financial burden anymore." Linda added, "Make sure you study something practical. No art nonsense." That was it. No celebration dinner, no family photos, just relief that I wouldn't cost them money. So I majored in business administration like they wanted. I took extra courses, maintained a 4.0 grade point average, and landed internships at top companies. I sent them updates every week, pictures of me at campus events, news about my achievements. They responded with one-word texts. "Fine. Okay. Good." I kept trying. And then 3 weeks ago, something strange happened. I called them to tell them about my upcoming graduation, expecting the usual indifference. Instead, Linda's voice brightened. "Dinah, honey, we want to throw you a graduation party, a big one. You deserve to be celebrated." I almost dropped the phone. In 22 years, they had never offered to celebrate anything for me. "Really?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Of course," Richard said in the background. "Our daughter is graduating summa cum laude. We want everyone to see how successful you are." I hung up and cried. Happy tears. Finally, after all these years, they were proud of me. Finally, I mattered to them. I spent the next 3 weeks helping Linda plan the party. We chose flowers together, picked out the menu, made a guest list of about 50 people. She even took me shopping for a dress, something she had never done before. I chose a cream-colored dress with delicate lace sleeves. When I tried it on, I looked at her hopefully. "You look presentable," she said. Not beautiful, not stunning. Presentable. But I took it as a compliment because I was so desperate for her approval. A week before the party, I was walking past their bedroom when I heard Richard on the phone. "Yes, the insurance policy is still active," he was saying. $2 million payout. He paused. No changes needed." I heard movement and quickly walked away. I didn't think much of it. Rich people had insurance policies. That was normal. 2 days before the party, Linda asked me if I had written a will. I laughed. "Mom, I'm only 22. I don't have anything to leave anyone." She didn't laugh back. Her face was serious. "At your age, you should start planning these things. You never know what might happen." The conversation made me uncomfortable, but I brushed it off. She was just being practical. The morning of the party, I woke up excited. I spent hours getting ready, doing my makeup, perfectly curling my hair. When I came downstairs, Richard and Linda were in the kitchen, whispering intensely. They stopped talking the moment they saw me. "You look nice," Linda said, but her voice was tight, nervous. Richard kept checking his watch, his jaw clenched. I assumed they were stressed about the party going well. I smiled and asked if I could help with anything. "No," Linda said quickly. "Just go relax. This is your day." The party was supposed to start at 6 p.m. At 5:30, I stood in my room looking at myself in the mirror. I had worked so hard to get here. 4 years of college, countless sleepless nights, sacrificing friendships and fun to maintain perfect grades. And now my parents were finally celebrating me. I felt like I could finally breathe, like I finally belonged. I went downstairs to help greet the guests, completely unaware that I had less than 2 hours before my parents would try to kill me. The first guests started arriving at 6 p.m. sharp. Neighbors, Richard's business associates, Linda's friends from the country club. They filled our backyard, admiring the string lights hanging from the trees, the long tables covered with white tablecloths, the tower of cupcakes on the dessert table. I stood near the entrance, smiling and greeting everyone. But something felt off immediately. Richard and Linda stood at the front door, shaking hands with arriving guests, making small talk about the weather and property values. But they didn't introduce me. Not once. I was standing right there, and they acted like I was invisible when Mrs. Patterson from next door asked, "Where's the graduate?" Linda pointed vaguely in my direction and said, "Over there." "No, this is our daughter Dinah." "No, we're so proud of her." Just over there, like I was a piece of furniture. I had to introduce myself to every single guest. "Hi, I'm Dinah. Yes, I just graduated from Berkeley. Thank you so much for coming." They were all very polite, congratulating me, asking about my plans. But I kept looking over at Richard and Linda, wondering why they weren't part of these conversations. This was supposed to be my party, but they were treating it like any other social gathering where I just happened to be present. My best friend Kristen arrived around 6:30. She hugged me tight and whispered, "You look beautiful. How are you feeling?" I forced a smile. "Good. Great, actually." She pulled back and studied my face. "You sure you seem tense?" I glanced over at my parents, who were now talking to a group of Richard's golf buddies. "It's just weird," I admitted quietly. "They're acting so distant." Kristen followed my gaze. "When are they not distant?" she said, and I felt a pang in my chest because she was right. I tried to join conversations to be part of my own party. Richard was standing with a circle of men discussing real estate investments. I walked over thinking maybe I could contribute. I had taken finance courses. I understood the market. But when I opened my mouth to speak, Richard talked over me, launching into a story about a property deal he had closed last month. The other men listened to him, completely ignoring me. I stood there for 5 minutes, invisible, before quietly walking away. Linda was no better. She spent 20 minutes talking to our neighbor's daughter, a girl named Amanda, who had just finished her first year at community college. I watched from across the yard as Linda laughed at something Amanda said, touched her arm affectionately, told her how lovely she looked. "Such a sweet girl," Linda said loudly enough for others to hear. "So well-mannered and gracious." I couldn't remember the last time Linda had said anything like that about me. Actually, I could remember. She never had. Kristen found me standing alone near the garden, staring at nothing. "Dinah," she said gently, "talk to me." I shook my head. "I don't understand. They threw this party for me, but they're acting like I'm not even here, like I'm bothering them by existing." Kristen took my hand. "You don't deserve this. You've done everything right. You've been perfect." Clearly not perfect enough, I said, and my voice cracked. That's when I heard it. I was standing near the patio doors, and Richard's voice drifted out from inside the house. He was talking to a group of men, and I heard him say, "Raising kids is expensive, especially when they're not even yours." The men chuckled. My breath caught. Richard continued, "College tuition alone could buy a vacation home in Maui. 4 years of throwing money at someone else's problem." I felt like I had been slapped. Someone else's problem. That's what I was to him. I knew I was adopted, but hearing him reduce me to a financial burden, a problem, made me feel physically sick. I turned to walk away, but then he said, "Well, at least it's almost over." More laughter. Almost over. What did that mean? I found myself walking to the far end of the garden, away from the party, away from the noise. I stood under a willow tree trying to breathe normally. My chest felt tight. My hands were shaking. Kristen appeared beside me. "I heard what he said," she told me quietly. "I'm so sorry." I wiped my eyes before tears could fall and ruin my makeup. "Why did they even throw this party?" I asked. "If I'm such a burden, why celebrate me?" Kristen didn't have an answer. I stayed in the garden for a few minutes, collecting myself. I could see the party through the windows. Everyone was eating, drinking, laughing. My parents were moving through the crowd like perfect hosts. And I was out here alone, wondering if I had ever meant anything to them at all. "Come on," Kristen said. "Let's get you some water." She linked her arm through mine and led me back toward the house. I didn't know that walking back to that party was the worst decision I could have made. I needed a moment alone, so I told Kristen I would meet her back outside. I walked around the side of the house, heading toward the kitchen entrance. That's when I heard them. The kitchen window was open, and Richard and Linda's voices floated out into the evening air. I stopped walking. "I can't wait for this to be over," Linda said. Her voice sounded strained, exhausted. "Just a few more hours," Richard replied. "Then the Leech will be gone." Leech. The word hit me like a physical blow. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart pounding so loud I was afraid they would hear it. They were talking about me. I was the Leech. 22 years of pretending to care, Linda continued. I deserve an award for my performance. Richard laughed. Actually, laughed. The money will be worth it. $2 million from the insurance policy plus her trust fund. We'll finally be free. Trust fund. What trust fund? I didn't know anything about a trust fund. Her biological parents left her quite a bit, Richard said. We've been managing it since we took her in. Linda's voice turned cold. Managing. We've been bleeding it dry. Good thing she never asked questions. Too desperate for our approval to notice. I couldn't breathe. My legs felt weak. I leaned against the wall, trying to process what I was hearing. They had been stealing from me. For 22 years, they had been taking money that belonged to me. Money my real parents had left me. And I never knew. I never thought to ask because I trusted them. Because I thought they loved me. All those times they said things were too expensive. When I was 15 and wanted to go to summer camp with my friends, they said we couldn't afford it. That same summer, they bought a brand new BMW. When I asked for art supplies for a school project, Linda told me we had to be careful with money. The next week, she came home with 5 shopping bags from designer stores. Every time I needed something, it was too expensive. But they lived in luxury while telling me we had to budget. I remembered being 18, telling them I wanted to minor in art alongside my business degree. Richard had slammed his hand on the table. Absolutely not. Art is a waste of time and money. You'll study business and nothing else. I had cried in my room that night, giving up my dream because I thought he was looking out for my future. Now I understood. He didn't want me to have any dreams of my own. He wanted me controlled, focused on what they decided, never questioning anything. Every birthday where they gave me practical gifts, socks, notebooks, a desk lamp, while they gave each other jewelry watches, weekend trips. Every Christmas where I got one small present while they showered each other with expensive things. I had told myself material things didn't matter. that I should be grateful for what I had. But it wasn't about the gifts. It was about what those gifts represented. I wasn't worth celebrating. I wasn't worth spoiling. I was just a burden they were counting down the days to be rid of. And then I heard the words that made my blood run cold. "Everything is ready," Richard said. "The substance is tasteless, completely undetectable in liquid." Linda's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "And it'll look like natural causes. You're sure?" "Positive," Richard said. "Heart failure from stress. She's been working so hard pushing herself. Everyone will believe her heart just gave out. Tragic, really. So young, so accomplished." They were going to kill me. Tonight. At this party surrounded by witnesses who would all testify that I had seemed tired, stressed, overworked. They had planned this. The party wasn't a celebration. It was a stage, a performance. And I was supposed to die right here in front of everyone and nobody would suspect a thing. "Poor Dinah," Linda said, and I could hear the fake sympathy in her voice already, practicing for the grief she would perform. "We gave her everything. We loved her like our own. This is just so devastating." Richard made a noise of agreement. "At least we'll have the money to comfort ourselves. $2 million from insurance, another 1.5 from the trust fund. $3.5 million total. Not bad for 22 years of work." I backed away from the window, my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. I felt dizzy, sick, terrified. I had to get out of here. I had to leave. But my car keys were inside. My phone was in my purse in the hallway. And if I suddenly left, they would know something was wrong. They would know I knew. And then what? Would they come after me? Would they try something else? I forced myself to breathe slowly. In and out. In and out. Think, Dinah. Think. I couldn't run. Not yet. I had to act normal. I had to pretend I didn't know anything. And I had to figure out how to survive the next few hours. I smoothed down my dress, fixed my hair, and walked back to the party on shaking legs. When Kristen saw my face, she knew immediately that something was very wrong. But before she could ask, Linda's voice rang out across the backyard. "Everyone, could I have your attention, please?" My mother was standing on the patio holding a tray. And on that tray were glasses of champagne. One of them I knew was meant for me. I walked back into the party trying to control my breathing, trying to make my face look normal. Kristen grabbed my arm. "What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." I couldn't tell her. Not here. Not now. Not with Richard and Linda watching. "I'm fine," I whispered. "Just tired. It's been a long day." She didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes. But she didn't push. Linda was still standing on the patio with the tray of champagne glasses. She looked radiant, smiling. The perfect, proud mother. If I hadn't just heard her discussing my murder, I would have believed the performance. Richard moved to stand beside her, and the crowd quieted down. "Thank you all so much for coming," he said, his voice warm and jovial. "It means the world to us to have you here celebrating our daughter's incredible achievement." Our daughter. The words sounded so hollow now. I stood frozen near the edge of the crowd, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Dinah has worked so hard," Linda said, her voice thick with fake emotion. "We are so incredibly proud of the young woman she's become. We wanted to do something special for her tonight." She picked up one particular glass from the tray, holding it carefully. "This one is for you, sweetheart. We made it especially for you." The crowd parted as Linda walked toward me, the champagne glass extended. The liquid inside was golden, catching the string lights. It looked beautiful, innocent, deadly. I stared at it, unable to move. Linda's smile didn't waver, but I saw something in her eyes. A challenge, anticipation. She was waiting to see if I would drink it, waiting to watch me die. "Take it, honey," she said, and her voice had a slight edge to it now. I reached out with a trembling hand and took the glass. It felt heavy, like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Thank you," I managed to say. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Richard raised his own glass. "To Dinah," he announced. "Our daughter who worked so hard, who made us so proud. May your future be everything you deserve." Everything I deserve. The double meaning made me want to scream. But I couldn't. I had to play along. I had to survive. The guests all raised their glasses. "To Dinah," they chorused. Kristen stood beside me, her glass raised, but she was watching me closely. She knew something was wrong. Everyone drank. The sound of 50 people sipping champagne filled the air. All eyes were on me now, waiting for me to drink. I lifted the glass to my lips, tilted it slightly, felt the cool rim against my mouth. But I didn't let any liquid pass my lips. I pretended to sip, then lowered the glass and wiped my mouth with the back of my hand, as if the champagne had left my lips wet. Linda's eyes narrowed just slightly. Richard took a step closer. "Drink up, sweetheart," Linda said, her voice still sweet, but with steel underneath. "It's delicious. I made sure to get your favorite." I didn't have a favorite champagne. She didn't know anything about what I liked. But I smiled and said, "I'm savoring it. It's so special." That's when I saw him. A man standing at the very edge of the party near the fence that separated our yard from the street. I had never seen him before. He was maybe 35, wearing a simple dark suit, nothing flashy. He wasn't talking to anyone. He wasn't eating or drinking. He was just watching. And when our eyes met, he gave the slightest shake of his head. A warning. He looked at the champagne glass in my hand, then back at my face. His expression was intense, urgent. He knew. Somehow this stranger knew what was happening. My mind raced. Who was he? Why was he here? Had Richard and Linda hired someone to help them? But no, that didn't make sense. The way he was looking at me, it wasn't threatening. It was protective. I needed to get rid of this champagne without making it obvious. I turned slightly as if looking for a place to sit and deliberately stumbled. The champagne sloshed out of the glass and spilled across the white tablecloth and down onto the grass. "Oh no," I gasped, making my voice sound distressed. "I'm so clumsy, I'm so sorry." Linda's face went dark. Actually, dark. The mask slipped for just a second, and I saw pure rage in her eyes. "Dinah," she snapped. "That was very expensive champagne. Be more careful," the guests murmured sympathetically. "It's okay. Happens to everyone," someone said. "Don't worry about it, dear," another guest added. But Richard and Linda weren't looking at the guests. They were looking at me, and I could see them calculating, wondering if the spill was an accident or if I knew something. "Let me get you another glass," Richard said, starting toward the kitchen. "No." The word came out too loud, too panicked. I forced a laugh. "I mean, no thank you. I'm actually feeling a little dizzy. I think I'll just get some water." I held up the nearly empty champagne glass. "I'll go rinse this out. I'm so sorry about the mess." I turned and walked quickly toward the kitchen before they could stop me. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the glass in the sink. I turned on the water and watched the remaining champagne swirl down the drain. Poison. That had been poison. If I had drunk it, I would be dead in minutes, maybe hours. I would have collapsed in front of everyone and they would have called an ambulance, and by the time it arrived, it would be too late. And Richard and Linda would have cried and held each other and collected their $3.5 million. The kitchen door opened behind me. I spun around, terrified it was them. But it was the man from the fence. He stepped inside quickly and closed the door. "Don't go back out there," he said. His voice was quiet but firm. I backed up against the sink. "Who are you?" He reached into his jacket and I flinched, but he pulled out a wallet, flipping it open to show me an ID. "My name is Marcus Webb. I'm a private investigator." I stared at the ID, not understanding. A private investigator for what? For who? Marcus looked at me with something like pity. "Your biological family hired me 3 months ago. Your grandmother has been looking for you for 22 years. I couldn't process what he was saying. My biological parents are dead, I said. They died when I was 3. I don't have any other family. Marcus shook his head. Your parents died, yes. Car accident on Highway 1. But your grandmother, Margaret Chen, she's alive. She's 78 years old, and she's been searching for you since the day Richard and Linda took you. The world tilted. I grabbed the counter to steady myself. I don't understand. Why didn't she find me? Why did it take 22 years? Marcus pulled out his phone, swiping through photos. Richard and Linda moved you around, changed your last name twice, kept you isolated. Your grandmother hired investigators over the years, but they always hit dead ends. Until 3 months ago, when someone recognized you from an old photo Margaret had posted online. A photo of your mother. You look exactly like her. He turned his phone toward me. The photo showed a young Asian woman, maybe 25, with long dark hair and a bright smile. She was holding a little girl, maybe 2 years old. The little girl had the same eyes as the woman, the same smile. I was looking at my mother, my real mother, and myself. A memory I didn't know I had. Tears blurred my vision. She's been looking for me. Marcus nodded. Never stopped. When we found you, Margaret wanted to contact you immediately, but I convinced her to let me investigate first. I wanted to make sure you were safe, that Richard and Linda were actually taking care of you. His jaw clenched. What I found was much worse than neglect. He swiped to another screen, showing me bank statements. Your biological parents left you a trust fund, $1.8 million. It was meant to be held for you until you turned 25, with Richard and Linda allowed to withdraw reasonable amounts for your care and education. Reasonable being the key word. He scrolled through the documents. They've been embezzling from it for 22 years. Luxury vacations charged to your account. Their BMW paid for with your money. Linda's shopping sprees, Richard's golf club membership. All of it from your trust fund. I felt sick. Every time they told me we couldn't afford something I wanted, they were spending my money on themselves. How much is left? I asked. Marcus hesitated. About $200,000. They've stolen over $1.6 million. My legs gave out. I sank into a kitchen chair, my head spinning. And now they're trying to kill me, I whispered. I know, Marcus said grimly. I've been following them for 3 weeks. I heard them discussing it. I recorded their conversations. He pulled up an audio file on his phone. I heard Richard's voice. The insurance policy pays out $2 million if she dies before 25. After that, it's void. We need to do it now. Linda's voice. And the trust transfers to her completely at 25. We'll lose access. It has to be before her birthday. My 25th birthday was in 3 years. They couldn't wait that long. They needed me dead now while they could still profit from it. I've been documenting everything, Marcus continued. The embezzlement, the murder plot. I have video of Linda putting something in your champagne glass tonight. I recorded it through the window. He showed me the video. There was Linda in the kitchen looking around to make sure she was alone. She pulled a small vial from her purse, unscrewed it, and tipped a clear liquid into one champagne glass. She swirled it gently to mix it, then placed that glass on the front of the tray. The one she would give to me. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped Marcus's phone. What do we do? I asked. We can't just let them get away with this. We won't, Marcus said. I called the police 15 minutes ago. They're on their way. I have enough evidence to put Richard and Linda away for attempted murder and 22 years of financial fraud. I looked toward the door, toward the party where my would-be killers were probably wondering where I was. But there are 50 people out there. This is going to be so public. Marcus met my eyes steadily. Better to expose them now in front of witnesses than to let them try again when you're alone. They already failed once tonight. Next time they might succeed. He was right. I knew he was right. But the thought of everyone seeing this, of the scandal, of the humiliation, made me want to hide. I know this is hard, Marcus said gently. But Dinah, You have to understand something. Your grandmother has been grieving for 22 years. She thought she'd lost you forever. She's outside right now in my car waiting to meet you. She's waited long enough." "She's here." My voice broke. "Right now?" Marcus nodded. "She wanted to be close, in case you needed her." Fresh tears spilled down my cheeks. I had a grandmother, real family, someone who had been searching for me, mourning me, loving me from afar all these years. Someone who actually wanted me. "What do I do?" I asked. Marcus checked his watch. "The police will be here in about 5 minutes. Go back out to the party. Act as normal as you can. When they arrive, stay close to me. I'll make sure you're safe." I wiped my eyes, trying to fix my makeup. My hands were still trembling, but something else was building inside me alongside the fear. Anger. 22 years of manipulation. 22 years of being made to feel worthless, unwanted, like a burden. And now they had tried to kill me. I stood up, straightened my cream dress, and took a deep breath. "Okay," I said. "Let's do this." Marcus gave me a small, encouraging nod. "Your grandmother is going to be so proud of you. You're stronger than you know." I walked to the kitchen door, paused with my hand on the handle, and looked back at him. "Thank you," I said, "for saving my life." "Thank you for being worth saving," he replied. I stepped out onto the patio. Richard and Linda were standing with a group of guests, but their eyes found me immediately. Linda's smile was strained. "Feeling better?" she asked, her voice tight. "Much better," I said, and I meant it, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of them anymore. I knew the truth, and the truth was about to set me free. I stood in the middle of the backyard, the party continuing around me like nothing was wrong. Guests were eating, laughing, taking photos. Kristen hovered nearby, clearly worried but not sure what to do. Richard approached me, his face concerned in that practiced way of his. "You look pale, Dinah," he said. "Maybe you should go lie down. Rest for a while." He wanted me alone, isolated, where they could try something else. "I'm fine here," I said firmly. "I want to enjoy my party." Linda joined us, her smile not reaching her eyes. "But darling, you've been working so hard. You must be exhausted. Why don't you go upstairs? We'll make sure everyone has a good time." "I said I'm fine," I repeated, and my voice was harder than I intended. Something flickered across Linda's face. Suspicion. She glanced at Richard, and some silent communication passed between them. They knew something was wrong. They could sense it. Richard opened his mouth to say something else, but that's when I heard it. Sirens. Faint at first, then growing louder. The guests noticed too. Conversations faltered. People turned toward the street. The sirens got closer and closer, and then they stopped. Right in front of our house. "What on earth?" Linda said, but her voice was too high, too tight. She knew. The doorbell rang sharp and insistent. Richard moved toward the front of the house. "I'll get it," he said, but Marcus was already there, walking through the side gate from the street. 3 police officers followed him into the backyard. The party went completely silent. Every single person turned to stare. "Richard and Linda Thompson," one of the officers said. His voice was formal, official. Richard straightened, putting on his authoritative voice. "I'm Richard Thompson. What's this about?" "We're in the middle of a private party." The officer stepped forward. "We have a warrant for your arrest, both of you. Attempted murder and embezzlement." You could have heard a pin drop. 50 guests stood frozen, staring. Linda let out a shocked laugh. "This is absurd. Who told you such ridiculous lies?" She looked around at the guests, playing the victim perfectly. "Someone is trying to sabotage us. This is clearly a mistake." Marcus stepped forward, holding up his phone. "It's not a mistake. I'm Marcus Webb, private investigator. I have 3 weeks of documentation. Audio recordings of you discussing poisoning your daughter. Video of you putting a toxic substance into her champagne tonight. And 22 years of financial records showing systematic theft from Dinah's trust fund." The crowd gasped. People started pulling out their phones. Linda's face went white, then red. That's not true. We took her in when nobody else wanted her. We gave her everything. You gave me nothing, I said, and my voice rang out clear and strong. Everyone turned to look at me. You stole my money. You made me feel worthless. And tonight, you tried to kill me. Richard's mask finally cracked. His face twisted with anger. You ungrateful little brat. Do you have any idea what we sacrificed for you 22 years of dealing with someone else's mistake? Mistake? I said, my voice shaking with rage now. My parents loved me. They left me money to make sure I'd be taken care of. And you stole it. You stole everything. Your parents were nobodies, Linda shrieked, completely losing control now. And you're not even our real daughter. We deserve that money for all the years we wasted raising you. The officer stepped between us. Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. He pulled out handcuffs. The metallic click as they closed around Linda's wrists was the most satisfying sound I'd ever heard. Richard tried to run. He actually tried to run, pushing through the crowd of shocked guests. But 2 officers caught him before he made it to the fence. They wrestled him to the ground and he fought them, shouting, "This is illegal. You can't do this. I want my lawyer." "You'll get your phone call," the officer said calmly, cuffing him. Kristen was suddenly beside me, her arm around my shoulders. "Oh my God, Dinah," she breathed. "They actually tried to kill you." I couldn't take my eyes off Richard and Linda as they were led through the side gate toward the police cars. Linda was crying now, mascara running down her face, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of fury at being caught. The guests were in chaos. Some were filming on their phones. Others were talking rapidly, recounting what they'd just witnessed. Mrs. Patterson from next door approached me, her face pale. "Dinah, sweetheart, I had no idea. If I had known they were treating you badly, I would have said something." But she had known. Everyone had known. They'd all seen how Richard and Linda treated me. They just hadn't cared enough to intervene. Marcus appeared at my side. "There's someone who wants to meet you," he said gently. He gestured toward the side gate and I saw her. An elderly Asian woman, small and frail-looking, with silver hair pulled back in a bun. She was leaning on a cane and her face was wet with tears. But she was smiling at me. "Dinah," she said, and her voice broke on my name. "My granddaughter." I started walking toward her, then running. I didn't care that 50 people were watching. I didn't care about anything except reaching her. She opened her arms and I fell into them, and for the first time in 22 years, a hug felt real. Felt like love. Felt like home. "I've been looking for you for so long," she whispered, holding me tight. "I never stopped. I never gave up." "I didn't know," I sobbed. "I didn't know you existed." "You do now," she said, pulling back to look at my face. She touched my cheek with a trembling hand. "You look so much like your mother. So beautiful. So strong." Kristen was crying. Several guests were crying. But I didn't care about them anymore. I only cared about this woman, my grandmother, who had spent more than 2 decades searching for me. Marcus cleared his throat gently. "The police will need your statement, Dinah, and there will be legal proceedings. But Richard and Linda won't be able to hurt you anymore." I looked back at the empty backyard at the party that had been meant to be my funeral. At the champagne glass still sitting on the table, poison meant for me inside it. "Good," I said. "Let them rot in prison." My grandmother squeezed my hand. "Come on," she said softly. "Let's get you away from here. You never have to come back to this house again." And I realized she was right. This was never my home. These people were never my family. But now I had found my real family. And I was finally free. The next few days were a blur of police statements, lawyers, and news reports. The story of the parents who tried to poison their adopted daughter at her graduation party spread everywhere. Local news, then national news, then social media. My face was all over the internet. Some people called me brave. Others called me lucky. I just felt numb. I stayed with Kristen for the first 2 nights because I couldn't bear to go back to that house. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Linda's hand dropping poison into my champagne. I saw Richard's cold calculation as he planned my death. I woke up gasping, my heart racing, convinced I was dying. Kristen held me while I cried, brought me tea, let me talk when I needed to, and sat in silence when I couldn't bear to speak. The nightmares were the worst part. In my dreams, I drank the champagne. I felt it burning down my throat, felt my heart stopping, felt myself falling while everyone at the party just watched. I would wake up sobbing, checking my pulse, making sure I was still alive. Therapy helped, but the fear lived in my bones now. The knowledge that the people who were supposed to protect me had wanted me dead. On the 3rd day, my grandmother came to get me. Margaret. She insisted I call her by her first name. "Grandmother is too formal," she said with a gentle smile. "I want to know you as you are now, not as the baby I lost." She took me to her home in San Francisco, a small but beautiful house filled with photographs. Photographs of my mother as a child, as a teenager, as a young woman. Photographs of my father, handsome and smiling. And photographs of me as a baby, the only ones she had. "I took these the week before the accident," Margaret said, touching one photo gently. It showed my mother holding me, both of us laughing at something off camera. "She loved you so much. They both did. When they died, it destroyed me. And then losing you too, when Richard and Linda took you away and disappeared, it was like dying myself." She told me stories about my parents, how they met in college, both studying architecture, how my father proposed on a beach at sunset, getting down on one knee in the sand, how my mother sang to me every night the same lullaby her mother had sung to her, how they had been driving home from a weekend trip when a drunk driver crossed the center line and hit them head-on, how they died instantly, and how I survived without a scratch because I was properly strapped into my car seat in the back. "Richard was your father's cousin," Margaret explained. "Distant family. When social services asked if anyone could take you, he and Linda volunteered. I wanted to take you myself, but I was 60 at the time and they said you needed younger parents. I believed them. I thought Richard would take care of you, keep you safe, let me visit. But he moved away within a month, changed his number. When I tried to find him, I hit walls everywhere. It was like you both vanished." Tears streamed down her face. "I should have fought harder. I should have hired investigators sooner. I failed you." I took her hands in mine. "You didn't fail me. You never stopped looking. You found me." She smiled through her tears. "I did. And I'm never losing you again." Living with Margaret was strange at first. She gave me space when I needed it, but she was also there, present in a way Richard and Linda never were. She asked about my day and actually listened to the answers. She made my favorite foods, learned what I liked, remembered small details. When I mentioned loving strawberries once, she bought fresh ones every week. It was such a small thing, but it made me cry because nobody had ever cared enough to remember what I liked before. I started my new job at the tech company. The work was challenging and exciting, and my coworkers were kind. Nobody there knew my story, and I was grateful for that. I could be just Dinah, the new analyst, not Dinah, the girl whose parents tried to kill her. I made friends, real friends. People who invited me to lunch, asked me to join their weekend plans, treated me like I mattered. Kristen visited often, and she and Margaret got along wonderfully. "I like her," Margaret said after Kristen's first visit. "She's a good friend to you, the kind who stays even when things get hard." She was right. Kristen had stuck by me through everything. When I was too scared to sleep alone, she came over with movies and popcorn and stayed until I fell asleep. When I had panic attacks in public, she held my hand and talked me through them. She was the sister I never had. The legal proceedings took months. Richard and Linda's trial was set for the following year, but there were preliminary hearings, depositions, endless meetings with lawyers. The evidence against them was overwhelming. The recordings Marcus had made, the bank statements showing the embezzlement, the video of Linda poisoning my champagne. The testimony of the chemist who analyzed the substance and confirmed it was a lethal dose of a heart medication that would have killed me within hours. Their lawyer tried to argue that they were good parents who made a mistake, that the financial issues were misunderstandings. But there were 22 years of documented theft. There were audio recordings of them calling me a leech, planning my death, laughing about collecting the insurance money. The jury would see through any lies they tried to tell. I had to testify at one of the hearings. I walked into the courtroom and saw them sitting there. Linda in an orange jumpsuit, her hair limp, makeup-free. She looked older, tired. Richard next to her, his face hard and angry. When they saw me, Linda actually started crying, reaching toward me. "Dinah, please," she said. "Tell them this is all a misunderstanding. We love you. We've always loved you." I looked at her for a long moment. Then I turned to the prosecutor. "That woman tried to kill me," I said clearly. "She poisoned my drink and watched me almost drink it. She stole my money and made me feel worthless for 22 years. I have nothing to say to her." Linda's face twisted with rage. "You ungrateful bitch," she screamed. "We gave you everything." The guards had to restrain her as she lunged toward me. Richard just sat there, his jaw clenched, staring at me with pure hatred. I walked out of that courtroom, and I didn't look back. Margaret was waiting in the hallway, and she hugged me tight. "I'm proud of you," she said. "That took courage." "I'm just telling the truth," I said. But my hands were shaking. Seeing them again had brought everything back. The fear, the pain, the years of emotional abuse. That night I had the worst nightmare yet. In the dream I was back at the party, and this time I drank the champagne. I felt the poison taking hold, my heart slowing, my vision blurring. I tried to call for help, but no sound came out. Everyone at the party just kept laughing and talking, ignoring me as I collapsed. I woke up screaming, my sheets soaked with sweat. Margaret came into my room, turned on the light, and sat on the edge of my bed. "It's okay," she said softly. "You're safe. You're here with me." She stayed with me until dawn, telling me stories about my mother, about the good things in life, about the future I still had ahead of me. And slowly, very slowly, I started to believe that I might actually be okay someday. The trial finally happened in November, 6 months after my graduation party. The courtroom was packed. News cameras lined up outside. I sat in the witness box and told my story from beginning to end. The years of emotional neglect, the financial abuse, the night they tried to kill me. When I finished, the courtroom was silent. The prosecutor presented the evidence methodically. Bank statements showing $1.6 million stolen from my trust fund. Audio recordings of Richard and Linda planning my murder, their voices cold and calculating. The video of Linda poisoning my champagne, her movements quick and practiced, like she'd done this before, like she'd been thinking about it for a long time. The chemist's report confirming the poison would have caused heart failure within 2 to 3 hours, making it look like natural causes. Richard and Linda's lawyer tried to paint them as victims. He argued they had given me a home when nobody else wanted me, that they had sacrificed their own happiness to raise me, that the financial irregularities were simply poor record-keeping. But the evidence was too strong. The recordings were too damning. You can't explain away someone saying, "the leech will be gone," as poor record-keeping. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they came back, the forewoman stood and read the verdict. "On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree, we find the defendants guilty. On the charges of embezzlement and fraud, we find the defendants guilty on all counts." The courtroom erupted. Linda started sobbing. Richard sat motionless, his face blank. The judge set sentencing for 2 weeks later. When that day came, I was there again. The judge looked at Richard and Linda with disgust. "You took in a child who had lost everything," he said. "A child who trusted you, who tried desperately to earn your love. And you exploited her, stole from her, and ultimately tried to murder her for profit. I have rarely seen such callousness in my 30 years on the bench." He sentenced them each to 15 years in prison, with no possibility of parole for 8 years. 15 years. It didn't feel like enough, but it also felt like freedom. I watched as they were led away in handcuffs, and I felt something shift inside me. They couldn't hurt me anymore. They had no power over me. I was free. The financial restitution took longer. With legal fees and the money Richard and Linda had already spent, I recovered about $800,000 from my original trust fund. It was enough to pay off my student loans, put a down payment on a small house, and invest for my future. But more important than the money was knowing the truth. Knowing that my real parents had loved me enough to make sure I would be taken care of. That I wasn't unwanted, wasn't a burden, wasn't a mistake. Margaret helped me go through my parents' belongings that she had saved. Photo albums, letters, small mementos. I found a letter my mother had written to me meant to be given to me when I turned 18. Margaret had been holding on to it all these years, waiting for the day she found me. I opened it with shaking hands and read my mother's words. "My dearest Dinah," it began. "If you're reading this, it means I'm not there with you, and that breaks my heart. But I want you to know that you were loved from the moment you existed. Your father and I tried for years to have a baby, and when you came along, you were our miracle. Every smile, every laugh, every tiny moment with you has been the greatest joy of my life. I hope that whoever is raising you now is showing you how special you are. I hope you know that you deserve all the happiness in the world. Be brave, my darling girl. Be kind. Be yourself. And know that your father and I will always be watching over you, loving you, so proud of the person you'll become. All my love, always and forever, Mom." I cried for hours after reading that letter. Not sad tears, but healing tears. My mother had loved me. She had wanted me. And even though she was gone, that love was still real, still mattered. It filled up some of the empty spaces inside me that Richard and Linda had created. I started going to therapy twice a week, working through the trauma, the betrayal, the years of being made to feel worthless. It was hard work. Some days I felt like I was making progress. Other days I felt like I was drowning in pain. But slowly, very slowly, I started to get better. The nightmares came less frequently. The panic attacks became manageable. I learned that what happened to me wasn't my fault, that I didn't deserve the abuse, that I was worthy of love just by existing. I got promoted at work. My boss told me I was one of the most dedicated analysts he'd ever worked with. I made more friends. I went on dates, though relationships were still scary for me. Trusting people was hard when the people who were supposed to love you most had tried to kill you. But I was trying. Every day I was trying. Margaret and I developed our own traditions. Sunday brunch together, just the two of us. Weekly phone calls even when I was busy. Holidays spent cooking together, creating new memories to replace the cold, lonely holidays I'd spent with Richard and Linda. She told me more stories about my parents, and I felt like I was getting to know them even though they were gone. 1 year after the trial, I went back to the house where the graduation party had been held. It had been sold, and the new owners had no idea about its history. I stood on the sidewalk looking at the backyard where I had almost died, and I felt nothing. No fear, no anger, just nothing. That place didn't have power over me anymore. I visited my parents' graves for the first time. Margaret came with me. We laid flowers on the headstones, and I told them about my life, about graduating college, about my job, about surviving. "I wish I had known you," I said, "but I'm grateful for what you gave me, for loving me enough to make sure I'd be taken care of even after you were gone." Kristen got engaged, and she asked me to be her maid of honor. Standing up at her wedding, watching her marry someone who truly loved her, I felt hopeful. Love like that existed. Maybe someday I'd find it too. Maybe someday I'd be able to trust someone completely again. I wasn't there yet, but I could see it as a possibility now, and that was progress. I started volunteering at an organization that helped foster children and adoptees, talking to kids who felt unwanted, who struggled with their identity, who wondered if they mattered. I told them my story, the whole ugly truth of it, and then I told them what I learned. "You matter," I said, "not because of what you achieve or how perfect you are, You matter just because you exist, and the right people will see that. The right people will love you for exactly who you are. Sometimes I still wondered what my life would have been like if my parents hadn't died. If I had grown up with them, surrounded by the love Margaret described. But I also knew that wondering about it wouldn't change anything. This was the life I had. And for the first time, I was okay with that. More than okay. I was grateful to be alive. Grateful for Margaret, for Kristen, for the second chance I'd been given. Richard and Linda were in prison, and they would be for a long time. Sometimes I thought about them. Wondered if they ever felt remorse, if they ever understood the damage they'd done. But mostly I didn't think about them at all. They didn't deserve space in my head anymore. They'd taken enough from me. I wasn't giving them another second. 2 years after my graduation party, I stood in my own small house, the one I'd bought with the money I'd recovered. Margaret was in the kitchen making tea. Kristen was on the couch, her 1-year-old daughter asleep in her arms. I had a good job, real friends, and a life that was actually mine. Not perfect. Still healing. But mine. I thought about the girl I was on that night 2 years ago. Standing in my cream dress, desperately hoping my parents would finally be proud of me. Willing to overlook years of coldness and neglect for one night of feeling valued. I mourned for that girl. She deserved so much better than what she got. But I also felt proud of her. Because when she overheard them planning her murder, she didn't fall apart. She didn't drink that poison. She stayed calm, she survived, and she fought back. She was braver than she ever knew. And she became me. Someone who knows her worth. Someone who won't settle for crumbs of affection from people who should give freely. Someone who understands that family isn't about blood or obligation, it's about love and choice. Richard and Linda taught me what love isn't. It isn't control. It isn't manipulation. It isn't making someone feel like they have to earn basic affection and respect. Love doesn't keep score. Love doesn't see you as a burden or a source of profit. Love doesn't slip poison into your drink and smile while you die. Margaret, Kristen, and the true friends I'd made taught me what love actually is. It's showing up. It's remembering the small things. It's fighting for someone even when they don't know they need fighting for. It's 22 years of searching and never giving up. It's holding someone while they cry and not asking them to be strong. It's making tea and telling stories and just being present. Do I still have hard days? Absolutely. Days where the trauma hits me out of nowhere, where I see someone who looks like Linda and my heart starts racing, where I wake up from nightmares convinced I can taste poison. But those days are fewer now. And I have people to call who understand, who don't judge me for still struggling with something that happened years ago. I've learned that healing isn't linear. It's messy and complicated, and sometimes you take 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. But as long as you're moving, as long as you're trying, that's enough. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep going. The biggest lesson I learned is this. I don't need anyone's approval to know my worth. Not Richard and Linda's. Not anyone's. I spent 22 years trying to be good enough for people who would never see me as good enough because the problem was never me. It was them. They were broken, cruel, empty people who saw a vulnerable child and decided to exploit her. That says everything about who they are and nothing about who I am. I am enough. I always was. I was enough when I was 3 years old and lost my parents. I was enough when I got straight A grades trying to earn love from people incapable of giving it. I was enough when I stood in that backyard and refused to drink poison. I'm enough right now standing in my own home surrounded by people who actually love me. And I'll be enough tomorrow and every day after that, regardless of what I achieve or how I look, or whether anyone else recognizes my value. That's what surviving taught me. Not just physically surviving that night, though, that's important too. But surviving emotionally. Surviving the years of abuse and coming out the other side able to love and trust and believe in goodness again. That's the real victory. Not that Richard and Linda went to prison, though justice matters. The real victory is that they didn't break me. They tried, and they failed. Sometimes people ask me if I forgive them. The answer is no. I don't forgive people who tried to murder me for money. I don't forgive 22 years of emotional abuse and financial exploitation. Forgiveness isn't something I owe them. But I also don't carry hatred for them anymore. Hatred would give them power over me, and I'm done letting them have any power. Instead, I carry indifference. They're just two people in prison who once tried to hurt me and failed. That's all they are. That's all they'll ever be. What I do carry is gratitude. Gratitude for Marcus, who saved my life and reunited me with my grandmother. Gratitude for Margaret, who never stopped looking, who welcomed me with open arms and showed me what real family looks like. Gratitude for Kristen, who stood by me through the darkest time of my life. Gratitude for every person who showed me kindness when I needed it most. And gratitude for myself, for being strong enough to survive, for being brave enough to testify, for being willing to do the hard work of healing instead of letting the trauma destroy me. I'm proud of who I'm becoming. My mother would be proud too. I feel that now in a way I couldn't before. She's not here, but her love is. It's in the money she and my father left me. It's in the letter she wrote. It's in the stories Margaret tells. That love reached across death and time and 2 decades of lies to find me. And that's more powerful than any poison. So here's what I want you to take away from my story. If you're in a toxic situation, if people are treating you like you don't matter, if you're trying desperately to earn love from people who will never give it, hear this, you deserve better. You deserve to be valued. You deserve to feel safe. And you deserve to walk away from anyone who makes you feel like you have to shrink yourself to fit their expectations. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones we trusted completely. The ones who were supposed to protect us. And that betrayal cuts deep in a way nothing else can. But surviving it, healing from it, that's possible. It takes time. It takes help. It takes being willing to feel all the painful feelings instead of running from them. But it's possible. I'm living proof of that. I don't need Richard and Linda's love to know my worth. I already have everything I need right here inside me. The strength my mother gave me. The resilience I built through years of hardship. The wisdom that comes from surviving something that should have broken me. And the love of people who chose me not out of obligation or profit, but because they genuinely want me in their lives. That's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything. What happened to me was terrible. But I'm not a victim anymore. I'm a survivor. And every day I survive, every day I choose joy and connection and hope, despite what was done to me, is another day I win. Another day Richard and Linda lose. Another day that proves love, real love, is stronger than cruelty. That's the truth I hold on to. That's what carries me forward. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from toxic people in your life? How did you find the strength to do it? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and your stories matter. If my story helped you in any way, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss future videos. And share this with someone who might need to hear it. You never know who needs the reminder that they're worthy of real love. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I know it wasn't easy to hear, but these are the stories that need to be told. The messy, painful, true ones. Because they remind us that we're not alone, that survival is possible, that healing is possible, that no matter how dark things get, there's always hope for something better on the other side. I hope wherever you are right now, you know that you matter. You're valuable. You're enough exactly as you are. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. And if you're still searching for your people, for your real family, keep looking. They're out there. I found mine. You will too. Thank you again. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to yourselves. And remember, you're stronger than you know.